Because believers question nothing but what they want, reality must be examined to prove that questions exist of various claims made by a university diploma are the elements they assert to claim life arose over billions of years. Humanity over millions just by chance. They claim 14 billion since the Big Bang arrived, which was the most severe change or catastrophe this universe ever made. They have made machines, the largest of which is CERN in Switzerland and France, to recreate a small Big Bang right here on Earth. So let's question the university diploma, asking simply, can the information they provide be true? We'll start by assembling the information relevant to a Big Bang as described by a universe of mass that is acting as if all the mass we can see was exploded out from the center. The deep space image from Hubble, taken over time by exposing the image for a long period, taken in the darkest spot of this visible universe, reveals that hidden in the distance are what clearly appear to be other galaxies. The university says this proves by extrapolating the time used in photography to produce the image that the universe is 14 billion years old, according to their redshift of light. The image speaks for itself. Make your own decision. However, the time frame is entirely errant and wrong, so we begin by asking why. The critical reality of a reorganized universe by explosive event first asks, was this a homogenized, everything gathered together and detonated entirely at once explosion? If it was, then reality states that the center of the explosive event was where no mass is left. All of it was sent into outer space. Or the center of the previous universe, where all the mass existed, is now a dark spot in space. In the time created by light, that would mean the Hubble dark space image goes through where that mass would have been, subsequently cutting their timeline in half. We ask again if the explosion obeyed the laws of physics, that an action produced a reaction of basically equal proportions in all directions dependent upon the shape of the mass exploding. Therefore, we can extrapolate the originating previous universe of mass was largely a circular disk shape. The majority of mass is found in a single layer dimension. It spreads out rather evenly in a plane. We know if nothing was left in the area where the explosion originated, that before this can happen, the atomic structure of that mass, assuming it was so, had to be weakened, like demolishing a building. If it is all going to collapse at once, then you need to take out some of the structure that holds it together so that it does collapse at once. Therefore, step one in the critical disassembly of our pre-universe is to weaken the mass to be exploded. From the effects of mass accelerated into outer space, we know that whatever true form that mass existed in, it did have a lot of energy associated with it. Therefore, it was dense in some form or other. In the physical mass, we know humans prepare that mass for destruction in an atomic bomb by using it in electrical generation, which functionally tears apart the atoms until they are barely held together by the energy within, making the ignition of a bomb much easier and its effect more complete. Thereby we can assert that this was like the mass we know, as is suspect from exploding things ourselves, that we know that the atoms inside that mass were weakened by removing the balance of energy in an atomic structure prior to explosion. CERN does that in the aftermath of its experiments. CERN uses particle acceleration to crash protons into protons at approximately the speed of light times the speed of light. They accelerate protons independent of the electrons on two train tracks, which then collide from different directions onto the same track by switching. The effect of that explosion on protons is some will escape and be accelerated themselves to an even faster speed because the explosion will follow them through that area, thereby pushing them, those that don't get crashed together. Through the area of energy expansion means that whatever speed they're going, and they say it's very close to the speed of light, that energy is pushed further, faster. The proton released in such a manner gathers the electrons that have been pushed to the side, because in trillions of volts the electrons must move away from their atomic center, so to speak, and that the protons actually pull them along with it, creating what can be called a wormhole, an upside down funnel effect, when a proton escapes through the explosion. If the electrons that are now freed from their atomic environments can pull it back into the mass of this Earth it is trying to escape from, then that proton acts like a spring. It bounces back and forth through the Earth mass because the electrons function as a spring, destroying the bonds and anything it goes through. The atomic bond. A proton is actual mass. Therefore, it functions much like a very, very tiny actual bullet. This continues back and forth through the Earth until the energy fails to do so anymore. And how long it takes is a reality for debate, but inconsequential to the question is CERN weakening the atomic structure of this planet, thereby preparing atoms for their own Earth Big Bang in some form. That would functionally be realized by knowing whether the proton escapes its Earth mass or whether the electrons disassociated with their protons, which crashed and exploded, pulled it back into the Earth like a spring, then bouncing it back and forth at over the speed of light. Sanity in humanity would stop saying we can't be wrong about this, but humanity at the university level is insane. They do it anyway. They want the job, they want the pride, they want everything, and refuse to give up nothing. Nonetheless, we know that the entire mass of the Big Bang exploded at once, since there is no great object left in space to assert otherwise. Since we can view objects escaping from a central location in all directions, basically along a dimensional plane. Given that truth, we know the mass was weakened so that it could explode. Simultaneously, in that single most destructive event in this universe has ever known. So then let's start at the dark, no visible light area in space, asserting this is the center of the explosive event. To ask the question, if an explosion acted according to the law, for every action there is a reaction, then we on this side of the explosion are going in the opposite direction of what is on the other side of the explosive event. A simple bomb goes off in all directions, does it not? Consequently, looking back through the center hole, that gives us a distance that is multiplied by the speed we are going, the speed in the opposite direction the other stuff is going, and the change in speed that has occurred since the explosion. More distinctly, speed or age cannot be determined unless you are looking directly at the objects that are traveling at 90-degree angles from us, starting at the center point, and then taking an average speed of all the mass known in that area, because not all of it will travel at the very same speed. And then, of course, you have to look at the area opposite as well. So let's talk time. Time is a relationship that discipline holds with order until that order reveals discipline is breaking down. Therefrom, no true distinction from edge to edge begins to reveal itself with age. More simply, aging means the loss of outer level compositions, as the ability to hold these precise edges in place becomes lost. There's no such thing as the faster you go, the slower time is, because those who suggest it are trying to relate that change in position into or in contrast with a different time period. Distance does not matter. Disciplines matter. To gain any true understanding in the disciplines of math so as to create an understanding of its order, we must identify the critical relationships the existence of a sun object creates in our universe. Without light, this universe is a distinctly different place. So we begin by asking of the previous universe, was there any light? Our relationship with that answer can only be identified by one of two distinctly different answers, since the previous universe was larger by the evidence of the explosion, entirely based in one single mass, then that mass either was on fire, thereby creating light, or it was not on fire. In the previous universe, there are things here was dark. There had to be something there. Mass is mass, antimass is antimass as well. If there was light, then there would seem to be light out in front of us. If we can look back, we can surely look forward as well. There seems to be none there, to be viewed as evidence of light preceding planets and their movements. A mass that size would have had a tremendous light. Science says there is not. Consequently, I vote for a dark pre-universe. A completely dark universe means with near certainty a very cold universe, but not without energy available. A black hole has energy, or more correctly, the opposite of heat energy. So let's ask the question, in a pre-universe that was completely dark, could the existence of mass previous to that event have been spread out with suns much like it is today? And could that reality of existence have been transformed into all mass was consumed by a single black hole gobbling up every other mass, including other black holes, to become the mass the Big Bang exploded into this universe? A black hole that attained the size of what is calculated to be everything in this universe is one thing, means massive stress cracks could and would have been fundamentally even more than one area of introduction. To the black hole, there would have been massive stress cracks in it. Perhaps exit holes as well in the antimass, the black hole itself. Anything that size will shift its position. It just can't hang on to that much mass or antimass in this case, creating more stress cracks, eventually running out of mass to fill the cracks, which means it can't pull anything more in than the most problematic relationships it had to maintain in order to retain its size with shifting of the hole. Large shifts would have generated heat inside the antimass, or the black hole, which means mass that is not moving, has no space. Heat would have traveled throughout the stress cracks because it moved. Movement begins to create heat. Failing to expand, this cannot move, it's a black hole. The only thing left for such an antimass to do was catastrophically fail. The difference between heat energy does move and cold energy can't move is a position of energy relative to its discipline. Or what was once anti-energy becomes heat energy when the physics of the event changed the energy direction. Heat mass versus cold mass, antimass, is simply the relationship between a potential energy that can move versus a potential energy that cannot move. The enormous array of suns with light in our universe begins with the intense areas of heat inside the originating black hole that became the Big Bang. They became suns we see in outer space. An exploding mass would contain hot, moving materials which do not adhere well to other mass. Therefore, the materials which became planets and things had to cool prior to any great attachment to each other. Those suns, the heat cannot escape, so it builds, which originated out of the pre-universe mass, then created the environments needed to put the mass back together into planets and such. As with all atomic fire, it cannot be put out. Thereby, even small pieces of atoms on fire would continue on fire even after the Big Bang threw them out for a lengthy period of time. Once these pieces of fire hit a mass of larger size, they ignited it to form a star. As to CERN and the damage they in fact are doing to our planet, the reality is they've learned little and will learn no more of anything worthwhile. It is merely a game with consequences that can shake this earth. It is a fool's stupidity, and it provides nothing else. Even so, the question of life itself arises. Therefore, we look more diligently at the first level of evidence. Before we can have a disciplined universe as it is today, we must have an orderly atom to build it with. That brings us to the question, if there were large pieces of initiating Big Bang left, and it was in fact what is called an antimass or a black hole, not capable of heat, that exploded, then we would find large black holes in this universe that were not made by dying supernova suns. We do, in fact, find those, as so scientists say, at the center of galaxies. As discussed earlier in the demise of a supernova sun, the discussion of how to build an atom already has been dealt with. We now have order and discipline as the atom we know, in this universe of time. Building time for our replacement universe then begins almost immediately. The question remains, how old is this universe? The answer to that is irrelevant. Mass is irrelevant to some degree. The answer to how old is life or not, that is a different discussion apart from this reminder not all things are as they seem to be. It takes thought to identify them. In the previous universe, we conceive of antimass and anti-energy which holds these things together, creating the potential of a universe that was similar to this one. It then collapsed from age and became dark, reigniting in time, renewed. So the question is, was there life in the previous universe? And how or what could have survived into this universe of time? That question begins the search for how old is life, dealt with in another issue. The things that are important to the understanding of anything are all the threats we face as humanity today. We face nothing more certain and nothing more disastrously and nothing more abhorrent or just enormous than the people who are trying to ignite atoms on fire in their machines. They will accomplish that. I've even given them some information, unfortunately, that can help them with that, because it has come to the point where we are facing a moment in our life on Earth when at any time they can in fact ignite atoms on fire, and we cannot extinguish those atoms at fire. We cannot do it. The sun has 10 million degree heat. It's a fire over the entire surface. They say the flames are 1 million miles long. It burns your skin in summer from 91 million miles away. Once they ignite that here, we're done. This Earth will become a sun. You should think about that. They can ignite that today, at any second, on any day, at all. And for those who are religious, biblically, the date and time has already been set. The book of Daniel in the Old Testament of the Bible predicts that from the great abomination, which is something so horrendous that it could actually destroy the earth, which is what igniting atoms on fire is, or trying to create sunfire here. That is such an abomination, nothing can top it. Nothing can top that. So, if the Bible is correct, then on the very first experiment, when the great abomination rises, on the very first experiment, when actual ignition of atoms can occur, that is when that term begins. The first death is the book of law, such as the Old Testament is the book of law. You failed the book. You failed to let the law help you. That is over. The second death is one of mercy, such as the New Testament is. That is about mercy, whether you earn it or not. It's about mercy. So that time, after the first one, that time will end in about April of 2018. You can, look for yourself. It starts with the first experiment the National Ignition Facility in America did at Lawrence Livermore Laboratories. I think it's April 1st, 2011, if I remember right. And it says, and the Old Testament prediction is that the world will end in shortly after that, or the halftime that just goes through. And that occurs at about 2020 sometime, if I remember right. You should think about it. Because once the fire ignites, there's nothing you can do. The universities say we don't have to worry about that because there's not enough gravity here on Earth, so it will just extinguish itself. Well, if it doesn't.